Thank you. Evangelist, no, not at all. Pragmatist, absolutely, because life's kicked me around. We have to be pragmatic about these. So like John Maddy said this morning, there is space for both battery electric vehicles and for hydrogen vehicles, and hydrogen with lots of other roles in the market. What do? We make electrolyzers. They're based on PEM technology, so it's a fuel cell working in reverse. What is the key market advantage, the USP about PEM electrolysis compared to the other technologies that have been around for almost 100 years in the electrolysis field? Very, very rapid response. That is why it is attractive to the system operator and increasingly in the future the distribution system operator as part of a solution for grid balancing. So our piece of technology sits between the infrastructure network and the demand. That could be transportation, heat, or renewable chemistry. 2015, the transmission system operator curtailed 0.85 terawatt hours of renewable energy at a cost to you and I, because we paid it through our electricity bills, £90.5 million. 2017, energy curtailed, I can update John Hunt's slide, 1.49 terawatt hours, but what I cannot find is what it cost. I imagine it's considerably more than £90.5 million. Last week, I was at Warwick with the system operator, National Grid, and they were saying they introduced what was called the demand turn-up, where they would pay people to use more electricity at fixed times of the day, particularly in the summer. Nobody took, or hardly anyone took the opportunity to be paid to use more electricity. I'll leave that one floating. So, hydrogen, a multitude of uses. We're particularly talking about its role as an effective near-term means of decarbonising transport, but it also has contributing factors to play in the role of decarbonising heat. If anyone's not aware, Ofgem publish the numbers every year of how much power or energy is transmitted over our infrastructure. At October last year, 900 plus terawatt hours of energy goes through our gas network. That is compared to 300 terawatt hours of energy through our electricity network. So hydrogen can play an enormous contribution to a significant carbon emitter in the UK, and that's industrial and domestic heat. But also roles to play in food, how you make margarine from vegetable oil, steel production. Lots of opportunities being demonstrated in Europe about the use of hydrogen, which chemically is a reductant in the production of iron and therefore steel. Lots of other things. We've just sold the world's largest PEM electrolyzer to Shell. They will be using that to balance their load at their refinery in Germany, but also significantly producing hydrogen for buses and also as a decontribution to the desulfurization of crude oil to make gasoline and diesel. But so there we are, power to gas. That's taking spilt or cheap electricity, turning it into hydrogen and dumping it into the gas network. I used to work for a utility company and we spent £350 million developing an energy storage technology which was power in and power out. The first 1 megawatt scale demonstration of that was at Aberthaw Power Station. We built 2 pilot plants that both had the capability to store 120 megawatt hours of energy. We were bought by a German company called RWE, and they said, why do we need to do energy storage? They closed the whole business. That was in the early noughties. 2-3 years ago, I went back to RWE in Germany and sat down with their head of strategy, and they bought one of our power to gas systems because they had surplus of renewable energy. They saw the opportunity to balance their grid, take that energy and dump it into their gas network. We've done a couple of those in Germany. Where it's perceived as part of the solution to wider decarbonisation. First one, we did it in Frankfurt. That was the first PEM electrolyser to operate in the primary and secondary balancing market in the German network to solve grid constraint and frequency balancing problems. We're doing that in the UK in a slightly modified form. There we are, and it's taken me 4 years to get this off the ground. We've now got the focus of the UK gas distribution network operators to see hydrogen as a decarbonisation of heat benefit. So we're building an electrolyser, 0.5 megawatt in size, not huge, but it'll be looking to inject 20% hydrogen into a closed private network, which is called Kiel University. Kiel University is effectively a microcosm, an exemplar of almost 60–70% of UK towns and cities in terms of the types of customers, the types of devices, and the usage for gas. The problem we've got, or the first hurdle to overcome, is the amount of hydrogen you can put into the UK gas network. For those of you that are old enough to remember, Towns Gas, John Maddy mentioned it before, that was in most cases locally produced, and it contained in excess of 60% hydrogen in some cases. We had a gas network that was perfectly set to take that. We transitioned to North Sea natural gas at the end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, and a pragmatic decision was made. What's the hydrogen content in the North Sea natural gas? It's 0.1%. Let's fix the rules there. So we're engaging with the Health and Safety Executive to prove via a quantitative risk assessment that adding 20% hydrogen into your natural gas mix, you'll not see any difference and the risk will be no greater. Hydrogen refueling, we've done this. You know what a hydrogen fuel cell car is. We've had this debate and it will continue. Opportunities exist in terms of extended range. That's becoming debatable because the battery electric vehicles are catching up, but slowly, and time to refuel. If anyone's a user of LinkedIn and is connected to me, you may see a story that I promulgated last week, and it was someone did the analysis about Elon Musk's putting his car into orbit. It did the analysis and said if he wanted to get from Earth to Mars, it would take him 250 years to charge it for that distance. If it was a hydrogen car, it would take him 1 year to refuel it. John mentioned it before. We bought the first Mirai. It's sometimes painful to be a leader in these areas, but we saw it as a no-brainer. We had the first Mirai, and we operate it daily from our facility in Sheffield and some of our other refueling stations around London. We've done that with support from organisations like Innovate UK and from the European Union, because one of the hardest things is not finding the land, because if we had a refueling station on the land where everybody who's made an inquiry wants us to build one, we would have probably got onto slide 2 of the UK H2 mobility map that Dennis put up a minute ago. We are inundated with requests with people that said, I've got redundant land, build one here. But what we're doing more importantly, with the support of organisations like Shell, is putting them onto existing vehicle forecourts. This is Cobham, the most widely used, whatever the footfall equivalent is in the automotive industry, motorway service stations in Europe. The next one is Beaconsfield, and there the hydrogen unit will be under the canopy. What does it look like? It's an electrolyser, it's some storage, it's compressing and dispensing at 700 and 350 bar. What we're about to do is build a bloody great big one in Birmingham to fuel a fleet of buses with extended capacity to provide fueling also for private cars. We're also doing one in France. Again, the French are leading this as a nation, and they're putting their own money in it with support from large utility customers like Engie. We do small ones as well, with support from organisations like Symbio and Arcola, where they're putting smaller vehicles out. We're doing this where there is constrained renewables and grid tightness and an opportunity, an entrepreneurial spirit to test the utility of hydrogen as a vehicle fuel, as a decarbonised heat, and just a general useful energy vector. Thank you.